All right, peeps, we're going to do some notes today on graphing f from f prime. Last time we did the opposite. We graphed f prime from f. Today we're going to graph f given the derivative of the function. So again, the goal is to sketch the graph of f from f prime. I'm giving you f prime right here. And we're going to graph f of x on this one. Now, one thing that's important is I need to give you some sort of coordinate to start at. In this case, I'm giving you that f of -3 is equal to -1. So that tells me that's a coordinate right away. So I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, and that's going to be f of 3 equals -1. So let's analyze this graph here of f prime. And there's a few things I noticed. Number one, it's linear. Okay, and that's totally fine. Number two, down here, I notice f prime is less than 0, which means this function f has to be decreasing. And I also notice that on this part, right from here on, f prime is greater than 0, so it's increasing. So the function over here will go from decreasing to increasing at some point. Okay, so this point here is where x is equal to -3. Let's start there on my graph. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some intervals and we're going to look at the change between them. So I'm going to look at this interval right here. So between -2 and 3, how is the graph of f behaving? Well, it's decreasing, and it's decreasing at different rates the whole time. But on average, between -3 and -2, it looks like, and I'm just going to pick the middle out, looks like it's decreasing by about, on average, -3. So what does that mean? That means that from -3 to 2, the function should decrease by about -3. Again, because the average rate of change between these 2 points, the average between these is about -3. That means between -3 and -2 here, I should go down about 3. So that means here I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, can't count here. 1, 2, 3. Got to stop looking in the camera. And that's my coordinate. Again, this is the rate that it's changing. And between -3 and -2, it's changing on average about -3. So that means between this point and this point, it needs to go down a total of 3. All right, let's keep going here. Let's look at between -2. Let's look at this interval right now. Between -2 and 1. First of all, I know that it's negative, so this function is going to continue to go down. But it looks like the slope is going to get less and less. So between -2 and -1, it looks like on average, it's changing by about -1. That means the graph is going to decrease by 1 over that interval. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to put a dot right there. All right, let's keep going. Let's look at between -1 and 0. Well, now we've actually turned the corner. And actually, we know that it's going to go to increasing now. So this is going to go down. It's actually going to turn the corner here. So between -1 and 0, the average rate of change is going to be about 1. So between -1 and 0, this function is going to increase by 1. And I'm just going to continue that pattern. I'm just going to look at intervals. So like this interval between 0 and 1 looks like it changes between 2 and 4, but on average, that would have a rate of change of +3. So from this coordinate, I know when I go over to this next one, I would have to increase by 3. And we've got a general shape of our curve at that point. That pattern is just going to continue, and that's going to be it for that graph. All right, let's do one more graph, and you're welcome to pause the video and get this graph jotted down in your notes. And it's important to note as well that I've given you this coordinate right here. This is the coordinate when x is -4, y is equal to a +1. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that on here, +1. So I'm going to go right there. All right, and what we're going to do again is we're going to look at intervals and talk about like what's the average change. So at -4, that's right here. Between -4 and -3, that's about right here. It looks like the average, first of all, it's positive, and f prime is positive. That means we're increasing on this interval right here. Looks like it's decreasing here, and then it's going to turn into increasing again. So right here, since I know the derivative is above 0, that means this graph has to be going up because the slope is positive. Between 0 and 1, it has an average rate of change. Again, I'm just choosing the middle of about 1. So that means between this point and this, I would have to have an increase of 1. Between negative 1, 2, 3, and negative 2, I have an average change of, it looks like about 1, 2, and a half. So that means from this point to this point, I would have to increase by 1, 2, and maybe I'll put another point there and a half. So it'd be up 1, 2, and a half. Maybe it'd be right there. And let's just go in our next interval from negative 2 to negative 1. Going to have, again, about that same increase again. So I've got to go up again. Holy cow. It's going to get off the chart here. So I'm going to go up another 2.5, which is going to put me right here. And let's just keep going. This has, between this point and this point, then we have another increase. Looks like on average it's going to be about 1. So it's going to have a peak of about up here. And I apologize for getting way off the graph here. And then it's going to turn around. It's going to start decreasing. And so when I get down here, what's going to happen here? Well, it's going to turn the corner, and this should be a max right here because the derivative changes from positive to negative, and you can see our graph, we're turning around now. So now the average rate of change between this point here looks like the average would be, that's a distance of 1.5, so the average would be about negative 3/4. So as I went over 1 here, I'd go down about 3/4. Between 1 and 2, the average rate of change is about negative 1.5. Or actually, no, it's more than that. It's about, negative 1 3/4. So I would go over 1, and I would have to go down 1 3/4. And then between 2 and 3, it has an average rate of change probably about the same, about negative 1.5 to 1 3/4. So I'd have to go down 1 3/4 again. And then between 3 and 4, it has an average rate of change of about negative 1. So between this point and the next one, I'd go down about 1. And then it looks like it turns around. And when I get beyond that, this graph is going to turn around because this is a minimum because it goes from negative to increasing. So I'm going to say, I don't know, looks like here it would have an average rate of change of about a positive 1. So this graph is going to look like this. And we're just using this to develop a pattern of what this would look like. And there's going to be our graph. So it goes from, it should be increasing from negative 4 to 0. So from negative 4 to 0, this graph was increasing. And then after that, it goes to decreasing. And then it goes back to increasing again. And again, I'm using those intervals and the average rate of change over those intervals to plot points over time. Okay, that's all I have for graphing f from f prime. We will practice this during class in the next few days.